Hey everyone, welcome to the 257th episode of the Internet of Things podcast. This is your host, Stacey Higginbotham, and your co-host,
Kevin Toffel.
And we have an awesome show for you today. We're going to be talking about the coronavirus, or COVID-19 as it were. We've got news from Microsoft Azure. Plus, we're going to talk about schools tracking children in ways that might be a little uncomfortable. We've got an app to help you protect your privacy in a world full of connected devices. News from several companies rolling out new products from Wise, Lutron, Semtech, and even Amazon. We've got a minor deal in the semiconductor space, and Kevin has a rant. It's going to be amazing. Plus, we're going to hear from DigiCert talking about the amount of data out into the world. Plus, we're going to talk to DigiCert about how to protect yourself from companies gathering so much data about you. And our guest this week is Om Malik, who is a partner at True Ventures, who's going to be talking about how we love to hate on our tech. All right, all this and more awaits you. But first, a message from another one of our sponsors. This week's sponsor is Very. Are you looking for an IoT development team who's been there, done that? Very's award-winning full-service IoT development firm will work with you to deliver your IoT solution on time and on budget. Learn more at www.verypossible.com. That's www.verypossible.com. Okay, Kevin, the coronavirus. This week, many of our show listeners were planning to be either in Barcelona or Nuremberg, or some cases both. Mobile World Congress, I think talked about a couple weeks ago, was canceled. And Embedded World, which is a big conference in the semiconductor and sensor and embedded space, is happening right now in Nuremberg. And while that show has not been canceled, most of the semi firms are not going, and I've heard from other companies who pulled out as well. And I'm bringing this up because I've been thinking about conferences in general and travel as the coronavirus continues to run rampant. And it's okay. It's cases are leveling off in China, but pretty much a pandemic state, I believe. And
yeah, it's bad. And I mean, MWC, I understand all the companies pulling out of there now. Embedded World, some companies are. This is not going to go away anytime soon. And I'm actually wondering, and I think there could be some relation to IoT here, I'm wondering about the Olympics. And that's in Japan. That is planned in Japan for June or July. And usually at the Olympics, we have some kind of like IoT something, whether it's a smart tracksuit or ski vest or wearable and all that. But at this point, I don't think it's going to happen, quite honestly.
Wow, the entire Olympics. That feels... I was just going to say, hey, the next show up I'm looking at is Hannover Messe in Germany, which is in April. So it's a huge trade show in Germany for, again, last year 5G was a big theme, but it's semiconductor companies, a lot of companies in the industrial and manufacturing space are there, sensor companies. I don't know.
Well, what's interesting is this will hurt the smaller companies and the startups far more than the big names because they can just have their own event or do a virtual press release. And because of their brand name, people will tune in and follow the news. So I don't think there's going to be any lack of technological improvements over the next couple months when it comes to IoT. But I don't think the smaller players who may have amazing products, I don't see how they get the word out.
That will be tough. I will say that I've seen almost every big chip vendor has launched webinars.
Yes.
Those are not the sexiest way to do these things, but there's going to be a lot of webinars in the next week, you guys.
I wouldn't know. I have an auto-delete rule in Gmail that anything that says webinar, just delete. So I couldn't tell you about that. On a related topic, just in case people have extra time after listening to our show, I highly recommend the Netflix documentary called Pandemic, which is not just rather timely, but I've learned a lot. That's all I'm going to say about it.
Okay. Well, there we go. You got to All the time you're not on an airplane this week, you can go watch that pandemic documentary. Or, something light. Whichever. Oh, another serious topic, security, specifically IoT security. Microsoft this last Monday said, hey, Azure Sphere, our security product that we've been talking about for roughly 2 years, is now GA, which means Microsoft is going to support it. And for probably most importantly for people, it's going to be readily available. For a while, they've had it in beta and people could get test modules, but it was hard to come by. And what Azure Sphere is, the idea here is that you've got to have security for the IoT in a couple places. One is on a secure module. So Microsoft has partnered with MediaTek, and they will work with other board makers as well, chip vendors and board makers. They've got a secure enclave on the chip where you're dealing with certifications, that sort of thing. And then they also have a cloud service. And the cloud service has 2 attributes. One, it checks back and provides the certs for the chip. And 2, it's constantly getting updated with information about the latest security flaws and vulnerability and can look for those behavior patterns among internet traffic and that sort of thing. So it's both a service and a secure device element.
There's 2 things that are interesting about this to me, and mainly because it's from a Microsoft perspective. One, they are using their own Azure Sphere Linux-based software to do this, not Windows or anything like that, which I find very interesting, although they've opened up quite a bit over the past several years, which is very good for them. And 2, these chips have to be certified by Microsoft, and that flies in the face of all of the legacy Windows runs on anything practically, and blah, 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 run whatever chip you want, et cetera. So it's just interesting from a historical perspective to me, because I've just seen Microsoft trying to be the solution for everything and everyone. Now they're really locking things down.
I think they have to in this space.
Yeah.
This grew out of a Project Sopris that was, I think we talked about it all the way back in 2017.
Mm-hmm.
And we had the creator, Galen Hunt, come talk to us on the show. What I think is worth mentioning in this particular product is the pricing. You will buy the Azure Sphere service and I guess the secure element, basically, you will buy that with your chip purchase. So when you buy this device, you're buying everything for 10 plus years, according to Galen Hunt. And when I talked to him this week, and the 10 plus is because if you bought it and you're not going to release your product into the field for a few years, which happens in the industrial space, in things like cars. You might have a piece of silicon enter into a telematics equipment for a car, for example, in 2019, but that won't actually be on the road until 2021 or 2022 even, right? Just the way these things are built and manufactured. So in one hand, you're still paying for that you're paying from it from day one, but you're guaranteed for it lasting for at least 10 years out into the world, which is pretty darn good.
Yeah. And speaking of Galen Hunt, I'm looking right now, and maybe we can link to this, to a paper from 2017, which I find
we wrote about that. Yes.
Uh-huh. And I just pulled it back up. It's resurfacing. The 7 properties of highly secure devices. I'll just quickly go through the 7 and people can read everything on their own. Hardware-based root of trust, small trusted computing base, defense in depth, compartmentalization, certificate-based authentication, renewable security, and failure reporting. Love it.
Yep. And that is a model that in the last few years has been both tested and accepted. So we're seeing not just Microsoft Azure Sphere, but other security companies building IoT security really embrace that. Something on the module and then something running in the cloud to certify against the module and to check for ongoing vulnerabilities, patching, etc. So, yep. Okay. Woo. That was a security story that wasn't terrifying. Yeah. Oh.
How about one that is terrifying?
Yeah, let's bring it, Kevin.
So I had never heard of this company that we're going to talk about. It's called InPixon. I assume I'm saying that correctly because that's what it looks like, InPixon. They are a company that has tracking hardware and software in malls, offices, and prisons, basically so they can track where everybody is in those locations. I don't have a problem with that. Not even the malls, really. And I don't work in an office, so I don't care about that. But now they actually have 10 or more schools in the US with radio frequency scanners that are tracking Wi-Fi and Bluetooth from students' phones, tablets, smartwatches, headphones, you name it. And they are tracking where the students are. Now, scary bit aside, the purpose here is to track where everybody is and also track if an unidentified device comes in and or a blacklisted device, meaning somebody is carrying a device and you know that somebody is not a good person. How they do that, I don't know, but that's a whole nother story. Regardless, I don't know about this whole approach of tracking every student in a school every second of the day. I get the security aspect. I really do. But as a parent, now my kids are out of school, but as a parent, I don't think I'd be too keen on this.
So you're not alone. This is actually a debate that's going at all levels of the education world. Colleges are actually using this type of software to track attendance in both classes. And there are some like schools that are using it at sporting events. Like if you sell a ticket to make sure that students stay in the stands for the whole game, right? So they're talking about like, hey, if you download this app with your ticket, we'll be able to see this stuff. And they try to incent it. In some cases, it's tied to the app. In some cases, it's just tied to like, you get some cool, like you can order your beer from the stands. I don't know. Mm-hmm. But the New York Times actually just did a story about this happening in upstate New York. It was a different company, SN Technologies Corp. But the logic is the same. Identify students where they are, people in the building that may or may not belong there. My concern is, in most cases, when you have a school shooting, it's either a student who's already doing it, and when they pull out the gun, they're ready, right? So you don't get a lot of time. Or if it's a stranger, they're coming in and they're pulling out a gun very quickly. So I feel like, what is it? It's not a red herring. It's not a false flag. But it's not
just not going to be that effective.
Right. I do seriously question the effectiveness of something like that. Now, it is interesting from a safety perspective. Like if you know, like you have X number of kids who are missing in the building, like they were in the bathroom or that sort of thing, and being able to like get to them quickly. That's interesting, but I don't like the idea of turning our schools into like basically China.
I think maybe there's a happy medium. I don't know if anybody's considered it, but maybe track the kids through their devices and wristbands that, Bluetooth wristbands that Pixon actually sells in the case of an emergency, like a red alert situation, right? But
Right,
at all
like goes
other
into
times,
lockdown.
yeah, exactly.
That would be good. And
I
then
feel more
parents-
comfortable with that.
And parents want, like, every now and then my daughter's school used to go into lockdown. We'd get an email saying, hey, there's been a shooting nearby. It wasn't at the school, but like, I don't know, I'm sure this happens in other places, but there might be suspicious activity or there might be like a bank robbery nearby. And we'd get an email saying, hey, crime's occurring near the school. So the schools in this vicinity are in a lockdown.
Mm-hmm.
It might be nice to be able to check an app and be like, okay, my kid's still at school, or at least their wristband is.
Right. Yeah. I mean, again, there is some potential benefit there. And I say that as a parent and a consumer in general. And Pixon says all their data is anonymized, but quite frankly, most schools, I would think at this point, I know the ones around me, all have security cameras all over the place. And all you need to do is just match up location with which camera to look at what time, and you can see who's where. So I don't really buy the whole anonymized data bit, but that's
There's no such thing as anonymized data.
Yeah.
Anyway, well, let's talk about other data, specifically new research from your neck of the woods, well, close to your neck of the woods. Carnegie Mellon has put out an app that helps you assess what IoT devices are around you and what information they might be collecting.
The university is doing a research project. I should say that right up front because I did install the app and I had to answer a bunch of questions saying that I would agree to participate in this research project. And, I read all disclosures, et cetera, et cetera. But if you have either an iOS device or an Android device, you can download the Internet of Things Assistant app, which launched this week. And basically what this does, or what it's reported to do, I've tried it, but there's nothing around my local area that's tracking anything, so I can't say for sure. Basically, it will detect if devices around you are gathering information on you, and it will alert you to that, which is great. Even better, if it can, it will tell you specifically what types of data is being tracked and can link you up to the consent forms so you can opt out of the different data types. Again, I installed it, but I live in Pennsylvania and there's not much going on here, so I haven't been able to actually test it.
I have not seen anything, but I have been on the road, and right now I'm in the middle of suburban Nashville, so similar issue. This reminds me kind of some of the more interesting things happening in the world are coming out of university labs when they're trying to figure out privacy policies. We talked last year about a service from Princeton called IoT Inspector. That's something you download on your computer, and it actually monitors your home network traffic to see what kind of devices are sending what kind of data where. So just throwing these out there. We'll include a link to the show notes, and when I get back to greater civilization, I guess, I don't know, my house, I'll give this a whirl as well. All right. In the new device category, we've got a couple cool new products. One, this is not actually on the market yet, but we've gotten a little taste of what the Wise Smart Band fitness tracking device might look like. I don't know what to call it. Wise Band.
Wise Band. That's what it's going to be called. It is. I'm looking at the Wise forums, the product updates right now as of this week. It is past development, past alpha testing. It is now in beta testing, and it showed up on the FCC database for certification, presumably for Bluetooth, because this band is probably more like a Fitbit than it is a smartwatch. And I say that because it's going to track your health and all that. It has Madam A built in, sort of like an interface to Madam A, so you can control your devices from your wrist. But I strongly suspect this has to be tied to your phone over Bluetooth, not over Wi-Fi, which would kill the battery in a day or two. So,
and it looks more like a Fitbit band in this, like not the Versa watch, which looks more like the Apple Watch, but like the actual bands with the elongated user interface. And
correct. So so this is like more like a band, like a narrow, long screen.
The charge bands, that's what they are.
There you go, the charge band.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, it has like smart home controls for the lights. It lets you stop and start recordings according to the little video they've published. I don't know if I want all that functionality in that interface. It's a lot of tapping and sliding.
It is. And you have, presumably, you have your phone with you, so you could just do it there. Maybe it's going to be, Wise comes out with this product and it's a third the price of a Fitbit. I mean, obviously, most of their products are relatively inexpensive.
Yeah.
So,
and the Charge was, I've got the Charge 3, and I think I got that on sale for like $130. So if you could buy it for $45, and sure.
Maybe some people will.
Yeah. I mean, this now makes their scale make a lot more sense. Because I had been questioning that for quite some time. And they also, little more bits on Wise. Wise's lock is now available again. It was sold out. This is the $89 smart lock that they sell. So if you want a Wise smart lock, just wander on over. You can pick one up. And they are also adding person detection back in. Yes?
They are. Who was the AI company?
That was purchased by Apple.
Apple, yes. And so we all lost our person detection at the edge there. So now it's coming back. It is being beta tested. I see over Dave Zatz at Zatz Not Funny. He's side-loaded or manually installed a new Wise Android app, and it has the person detection. I don't know if somebody else has created that or Wise did it themselves, but at this point, it's in beta test. Oh, I take that back. I'm reading the release notes. The beta testing phase is for cloud-based person detection. So it's not.
They didn't do it. Okay. Actually, let's redo that. That's confusing.
Yeah,
Aaron, we're going to pull back on after the lock. So we're going to go back.
Sounds good.
Okay. And then they're also doing person detection again?
Again, yes. So they were doing it on Edge through a company that Apple eventually bought, so they had to remove that functionality. Now they're doing it via the cloud, unfortunately. I say unfortunately because there's something else we're going to talk about later in the show. Cloud has left a bad taste in my mouth this week. So Dave Zatz over at Zatz Not Funny has the beta app installed on his Android phone, and he's got early access to the person detection. But again, it is cloud AI based person detection, which is very different than what they had in the past. You had edge based on device person detection on the Wise cameras,
which was so cool.
It really was.
And it was
really
pretty
was
effective too. And all this means is if it's cloud based, that just means when, the internet's down, it's down. There's a little bit of latency. Just traditional.
Or if there's an outage from the service company themselves.
All right. Hey, before we get to that, before we get to Kevin's rant, let's talk about some other new products that are out there. I am terrible, you guys. I forgot to tell you about this in early February when these launched, but Lutron, earlier this month, announced the smart home motion sensor that runs with their Caseta program. So Caseta is their lighting controls, etc., and it might be Caseta. I could be saying that wrong. And then they also have the Serena shades. But what this does is the motion sensor, now you can have it turn on your smart devices when you walk into the room like any other motion detector. It has a 180-degree field of view, which is pretty good, a 10-year battery life, and you can actually control the lighting levels for any device that is tied to that sensor, which means when I walk into a room, I could actually have like one light turn on at full power, another at lower power, et cetera, et cetera. They also introduced a new Caseta repeater, and this is for homes that you need more for their smart bridge. So I had the Caseta smart bridge that controlled all the lights in my home, which was 3 stories tall and very tiny. It was on a small lot. But if you have like one of those rambling ranch houses, you might need one of these. So these are both now available to you. Yay! The sensor is going to sell for $49.95 and the repeater should be $74.95. And yeah, I'm going to try to get some into my house to review. It's a little difficult since currently I'm in a rental house, but it's worth it. I love the Lutron products. I expect I will continue loving these. As motion sensors go, I will say this is kind of expensive. You could also used to be able to tie your Lutron system in with Wink and motion sensors together with that, but now I'm not sure how I'm going to handle that. In other new products, Semtech, the company behind the LoRa radio standard and chips, they have built something called LoRa Edge, and this is nice. Basically, now your LoRa radio can tie into the LoRa cloud that Semtech has built and get GPS and GNSS signals. And that's just the other satellite.
The other GPS location system.
The other location system in the world. And it also does Wi-Fi scanning. So basically, this brings location to LoRa networks, which is pretty cool. LoRa is, just for everybody who's like, what? Sorry about that. It is a low power, wide area network. What you could do is you can transmit tiny amounts of data over relatively long distances, like a kilometer. And it is useful for things in industrial and commercial settings, but we've even seen people use LoRa to like make smart mailbox sensors that'll pop a LoRa based sensor in your mailbox. And when your mailbox opens, it sends a thing to your LoRa gateway and then it can talk to your phone. You don't need to know where your mailbox is because hopefully it stays in roughly the same place. But I guess you could put one on your dog collar, and if it wanders around within a kilometer range, you'd know where your dog was.
Yeah. My dog has short legs, so he can't even go a kilometer. So that would work.
There you go. Or your drone. You could stick one of these on your drone, and when it falls away, I don't know. But this is more for corporate, I'll be honest. This is not really for us.
So we had news in my backyard. I think we have some in your backyard because this next bit is about something in Seattle, although I don't know where the Capitol Hill neighborhood is.
Oh, it is not my backyard because my backyard would be Bainbridge Island, but Capitol Hill is...
Oh, sorry. My bad.
It is only... No, well, my first thought was, in Austin? There's something there? So clearly I have not gone anywhere. But Capitol Hill is like not even a mile from downtown. It's on a hill.
just a ferry ride and an e-bike away.
Exactly. You definitely
Yeah.
want that e-bike there. The elevation
All
game
right.
is stellar.
Well, buy your ferry tickets and rent that e-bike because you can now, as of this week, go to the newest Amazon Go location, which is not a small little grocery store. It is a 7,700 square foot grocery store, and it is packed with cameras on top. Oh my goodness. So this is one of those cashierless places where you can just grab your stuff and go. You check in with a QR code on your smartphone when you walk in, and you just grab all your stuff, you leave, and you get, billed and pay for automatically what you've taken. The cameras in this thing, I've looked at some pictures. I wondered why, because there's a lot of ways to determine who's buying what. It's about the produce, because this is not just your typical grab and go kind of thing. This is a full-fledged grocery store. So it's all about the produce, because people pick up things, they put down things, 2 oranges, 3 oranges. That one's too big. That one's not ripe enough. I want a mango. Everything's pre-priced at the same price. It's not by weight. The cameras actually determine your produce. It's really interesting.
So they're not pricing it based on weight? They're just like, this apple looks roughly $1.50's worth of apple?
Yeah, so I'm reading something right now on GeekWire who did like a big story about it. 19-cent bananas, $1.29 grapefruits, 49-cent avocados.
Huh.
Nothing gets weighed.
Okay. And for anybody who's deciding to go to Seattle and wants to do a touristy thing, you can go to this slightly larger Amazon Go store. You will also be able to go down the street to the Seattle Roastery. Woo! And right next door is the famous Oregon transplant ice cream company, Salt and Straw. So
Ooh.
I've just created an all-day Seattle experience excursion right there.
Who needs Yelp?
You've got me. Okay. I will go to that grocery store and report back. I will admit, y'all, shopping at the Amazon Go store, it's pretty nice. And at the end, you get your receipt and it's like, you spent 25 seconds here. And you're like, ha, 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 suckers. So that's just me. In tiny, tiny little IoT news, industrial IoT news, and chip news, because that's me, Dialog Semiconductor said it will acquire Adesto for $500 million. So I shouldn't say it's tiny, tiny. It's more money than I make in a year. So they're going to pay $500 million. Adesto makes a lot of technologies for the industrial IoT. They make a lot of chips for all the little machines that talk to other machines, and they support all the different protocols. And it's just incredibly geeky, incredibly nerdy. This will help Dialog get deeper into that market, and it makes a ton of sense. There's consolidation in the chip market. There's tons of consolidation in the industrial IoT market. So basically, this happened. So moving right along.
Here we go.
It's time for Kevin's rant. Shall we tell everybody who doesn't have a Nest or Google Nest camera what happened this week?
Yeah, there was an outage, and we now know that, according to Google, it was due to a server-side software update that went awry. But Nest cameras were down for about 17 hours. So no recordings were captured.
So it was a good time to steal packages off of the home of anyone with a Nest doorbell, or run into a car in front of someone's house if they had like a Nest camera facing out.
Yeah. Did I mention the new TV I just got for practically nothing? No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, I was like, I'm so slow in the uptake.
That's okay. That's okay. So a couple things here before I get into the rant. Right before the show, you and I were talking about, this is Google. I mean, they're not like amateurs about rolling out software updates, right? And that's true. But in a sense, because they're cloud-based and because they're distributed with their cloud zones, availability zones around the world and so on, if they miss something in testing and it gets deployed to their network, it's basically deployed worldwide. Maybe not at all at the same time, but it's kind of hard to go back and just undo what you did on one box because it's on lots of boxes, lots of servers around the world. And that shouldn't happen, obviously, but it did. This happened around noon Pacific time on Monday, and it's now resolved. So I don't want to rant too much about this, but I'm getting tired of these cloud outages for things in my home. I don't understand. I mean, I know that Google, I know that Amazon and others are working on local based commands and data and AI and person detection, as we talked about earlier. But why can't these cloud based cameras, for example, or doorbells or what have you, work as old school IP cameras so I can at least look outside my house without going outside and so on? This has to be fixed sooner rather than later. It's just people are not going to spend money on hardware and monthly subscriptions and then have an outage like this when I think at least you can mitigate it to drop down to a lower service level. Maybe my Nest Hello doorbell can't, I don't know, maybe I can't talk to the person or something like that, or maybe it can't store data in the cloud, but at least I could view the person when they ring the doorbell, right? Something's got to give here because it's 2020. This is ridiculous.
Well, and I know you're in line to get one of these when it goes out for review units, but might I remind you that there's a product called Camect, CAMECT, that includes a terabyte drive that you can tie your existing both IP cams and cloud cams into, and it will store data locally.
Yes, you can remind me of that, and I'm looking forward to that product.
I'll just pop that in there for you. It's a pricey device, but for people who are into that.
But it gives you the peace of mind that if something, there's no fallback. I think that's my bigger issue. There's no fallback. When something's not working, it's because of the cloud. It's just not working. Let's find a way, Google's and Amazon's and Apple's and everybody else out there making these devices, to at least fall back to some type of localized access.
Even if it's just let me look through it. Well, you can't look through the app. You could look through it, I guess, on your phone, on your home network.
But in theory, you could look through it through your app. I used to do that with IP cameras all the time because they were on my network. I don't think this is a technical problem. What I think it is the companies don't want to give up these subscription fees in a sense because they made a land grab there.
Yes, I think you're right. Well, at least Google did communicate. I was following Google's Twitter account and they were like, hey, we acknowledge that this is happening. We're working on it. We're going to update you in an hour. And that was nice, I thought.
No argument there. And I don't mean to just pick on Google because of the recent Nest outage this week, because it's happened to Ring. It's happened, to other vendors and service providers. I'm talking about in general. But I was looking at some tweets. I'm looking at the Verge's story right now, and there's tweets they embedded. Please don't tell me today's video history is gone. I had a break-in. And then a response, yep, and my elderly father fell. Only the 2 times I needed its history, it was deleted.
Now, this is why I tell people not to use these as their baby cameras. And apparently for your elderly father.
But people are relying on these.
I know. That's not a good plan.
No.
Well, at least Google talked to people. PetNet had their devices down this week for a long time, like a full week. And they actually didn't communicate with anyone and no one else could talk to them. So, hey.
Yeah.
All right. So I appreciate your rant. I am all for local. I think we'll see more local. I'm looking forward to what Google maybe will announce at I/O in May around that. So yay. Okay. That's about it for this week's news section. Please let us now go to the Internet of Things podcast hotline, where we listen to you, our listeners, as you ask us questions and give us your thoughts on the smart home. If you would like your question or thought to be aired, please give us a call at 512-623-7424, and we might play your message on the air, and you will be entered to win a set of Hue light bulbs. So please call us. Your last chance to win is actually February 29th at midnight Eastern. So call us before then, you're entered for February. Call us after then, you'll be entered for whatever March's contest is.
You get an extra day this year because of leap year.
That's right. Your entries won't count double, though. Sorry. Okay. And this week we have not a question. Well, it is kind of a question, but we're going to leave it for everyone else who's listening to act on it. Let's hear it.
Hi, Stacy. My name is Thomas, and I am a network security professional. And I just wanted to comment on the ability of you to use two-factor with MOEN sensors. They don't seem to allow you to do that. And I was wondering if you could possibly talk to them and tell them that it would be really nice if they would enable two-factor on all their accounts. Thank you.
Thomas, you are preaching to the choir. Kevin and I are huge fans. We believe everybody should have multi-factor authentication, even weak SMS-based multi-factor authentication if you must. That's fine. That's where probably most people are going to be. It should all be an option on everything, especially something as important as a device that can turn your water on and off.
I mean, anything in your home should have two-factor authentication in terms of the app and the setup and login,
I don't know.
honestly.
I had some smart socks, and they probably didn't need two-factor.
I guess not. All right. That's an exception. I'll grant you that one. But, water, yeah, absolutely. I don't want somebody to flood my house while I'm gone.
HVAC, electricity, lighting.
Cameras
100%. I'm trying to think of lighting. Maybe lighting doesn't need two-factor. I think so.
I'd rather have it on everything, quite honestly. Even socks.
Right. I'm like, sure.
To be fair, a lot of companies recently have added two-factor authentication. It seems like this movement is picking up steam. And I think it's picking up steam because people are complaining that they don't have it. So keep complaining, in my opinion.
Yeah. So Moen, and I've actually had the CEO of this particular device. It's Gabe Halimi, who is the CEO and co-founder of Flow Technologies. Gabe, if you are listening, poor Thomas, all he wants is some two-factor authentication on this thing. Let's make it happen. All right. And everybody else out there making stuff, make it two-factor. Whoop, whoop. At least optional. Okay. That's it for this week's question/statement. Remember, if you would like to give us a call, you can reach us at 512-623-7424. And now, please stay tuned for our guest, Om Malik, who is my former boss and a partner at True Ventures. He's also Kevin's former boss, we should also say.
Yes, he is.
And he is going to be talking about the current rise of negativity around tech, so the techlash, as it were, and how we should really be thinking about having conversations about this stuff. But before we get to that, we have a message from our sponsor. This week's sponsor is DigiCert. Hey everyone, we are taking a quick break from the Internet of Things podcast for a message from our sponsor. This week's sponsor is DigiCert, and I have Mike Nelson, who is the VP of IoT security at DigiCert. Okay, Mike, so today we are going to be talking about data, specifically how much more of it there is today than there has been ever before. Domo, which is a business intelligence firm, said that they are going to collect 40 times more bytes of data in 2020 than there are stars in the observable universe. That's 40 billion trillion bytes of data. What should I think about all of that data being out there?
Yeah, it's hard to comprehend the volume of data that's being gathered. I think as consumers, it's important just to be aware that this data is being collected. IoT, by its nature, and the devices that we're introducing into our lives are doing that. They're tracking and gathering information on us and sharing it with the businesses that are selling those devices. And as consumers, I think the first step is awareness and just being aware that all of this data, everywhere we go, whether it's in our car or in a hospital or even in the near future, retail shops, are all collecting data on us, and that data is being used to create some conveniences for us, but it's growing.
There are clear benefits to collecting and having access to this data, but what are the risks associated with having all of this data out there?
Yeah, great question, Stacey. And the fact that that data exists is the first level of concern. Data about ourselves that people can use to, impersonate us or to steal our identity is concerning. And so that data needs to be handled in a confidential way. And as more and more enterprises are collecting this data, it's important that they're using security best practices of encryption. And that's encryption of the data once they've gathered it and it's sitting at rest, but also as it's transmitting from a device to a server.
How do you think we should make consumers aware that this data collection is happening?
Great question, Stacey. And I really think that's the next frontier. As this data is being collected, consumers are starting to pay attention, and we saw recently the state of California that has legislation to protect consumers and requiring companies who sell products in California to notify consumers when that data is being collected and then to give them the option of opting in and allowing the company to collect it or to opt out. And I believe we will see more and more governments follow California in that regard.
So we've talked about opting in and encryption, but how else can the industry protect consumer data?
Yeah, when we talked with our customers, we always encourage them to not use hard-coded credentials. We encourage them to use better authentication approaches like multi-factor authentication or certificate-based authentication. We also encourage them to use encryption to make sure that the data that's being collected is handled in a confidential way. And finally, I always encourage our customers to sign data packages that are coming to and from the device to make sure that the data can be relied on and has integrity associated with it.
Awesome. And where can our listeners go to learn more about DigiCert?
Your listeners can go to digicert.com, and we have an entire section focused on IoT device security.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Internet of Things podcast. This is your host, Stacey Higginbotham, and today's guest is Om Malik, who is a partner at True Ventures, and in my mind, more importantly, my former boss and mentor. Hi Om, how are you today?
I am great, Stacey. Thank you for having me. And as always, it's great to hear your voice.
Oh, it's so good to have you both on the show and to chat with you because you're pretty smart about this whole technology and life thing. And you're also a nice guy. We're not going to draw on your nice guy skills so much today, but you did an article recently on ohm.co where you talked about the dual nature of tech, how we aren't appreciating the trade-offs that we get for the tech that we have today. And I'd love for you to kind of explain what you mean by that.
Actually, as you and I have known each other for a very long time. And, I have a dual relationship with technology. I can absolutely appreciate all the great things about technology and what it brings to us. But at the same time, I'm also questioning the ethics and the morality of technology and technology industry. And both at the same time, one is not without the other. And of late, though, the narrative in the popular media has become that technology is evil. And my argument is that is not really the case because we completely forget that there is a lot of advantages to what technology brings. We forget that a lot of the things we have which are deemed evil are also, leading to positive changes, like the same surveillance technologies which people complain about, the computer vision and AI are also the same technologies which are leading to new drug discovery, better detection of cancers or other such life-saving breakthroughs. There is always this dichotomy which exists with technology, and this is not something current. It has always been the case. From the Industrial Revolution into where we are today, there have always been trade-offs we have to make in terms of taking advantage of new technologies and the convenience they bring. At the same time, we do lose some of ourselves as a result of it. And I think that duality is what we need to learn to internalize and be more thoughtful about it. And instead of our current media landscape is all about all technologies, evil, outrage. And I'm just like, we can be critical and yet be appreciative of a lot of things which happen. And I think that's where I am coming from. Yeah, you can question Facebook as much as you want, but for a lot of people, that's the only lifeline of connectivity.
And the Facebook example is a good one because in your article, you do such a great job humanizing tech. And you talked about being in contact with your family through a pretty hard time using WhatsApp. And at the time you were like not thinking about WhatsApp, its policies around encryption or anything like that. You were just like, hey, this helps me communicate easily with my family who's thousands of miles away. And I'd love for you to kind of talk about how you resolved that internal conflict when you were not thinking about it because you needed it, and then what you did afterwards when you were like, okay, maybe I don't need this as much now.
I think, this is what I was trying to say earlier. It's like this is the dichotomy of technology right now. At the time of my emotional need, whether it was FaceTime or WhatsApp, I was not thinking about the payload of negativity around those companies. I just was trying to focus on connectivity and connection they were enabling. And I think that's the aspect of technology and networks we forget is the connections they enable. Like I've always known that Facebook as a company has dodgy ethics. Go read anything from GigaOM from 2008 onwards and you can see I was the first one to tell you that that's a dodgy company. But at the same time, I can't deny the fact that WhatsApp was useful. And I think that conflict is what I live with. And I think all of us have to recognize that conflict. It's sort of like we know that fossil fuels are going to kill the planet, but we still drive, we still take Uber, we still fly. We haven't stopped doing it, right? I just think that's who we are as humans. There is the convenience and the trade-offs which come from it. And I think that just is a huge reality. This is the reality of 2020.
Well, let me ask you, because a lot of people say that the original sin of the internet was the advertising model. And especially as we move from the web, the mobile web, to having connectivity embedded into everything in our lives, was that the original sin? Or is there a way to come back from that, do you think, where we can still have convenience and less worry about our data and how companies are using it?
First of all, I don't know what is the original sin. I think sloth is the original sin, but whatever. I think we have to be very rational and thoughtful and clear about how we mandate the rules, regulations, and create guide rails around privacy and data and how companies use our information. Right now, we don't have any of those rules and regulations that are actually well thought through. What we have is very haphazard ideologies as rules and regulations. I think if you look at somebody like Facebook, they change their rules all the time. Google has changed its policies over a period of time. So as Amazon. And I mean, it's like the reason they are able to do that they keep changing all these things is because the government hasn't really thought of data and privacy rights and usage of that data and information from an individual's perspective. They only have thought of it as like a larger policy. I just think, again, you and I have discussed this many times, even on your podcast, is that there hasn't been very clear thinking around it. And I think in order for us to move forward, we need to kind of be hype and outrage free and look at like what's going to happen and make rules and regulations based on that. All policies based on from an individual standpoint, what is right for the society at large. Really thinking through these things is important. It doesn't help if the media is constantly being outraged about technology. It doesn't help if the companies are breaking the rules all the time. So on both sides, there is an issue. And I think we need to kind of have calmer heads putting together the right policies. And I think that is unfortunately not happening. And what we need is for that to happen in the age of AI and computer vision and all these new things which are going to happen. You look at what California is doing, what GDPR is doing, great first stage of crafting the right policies. But, my God, there is so much work that needs to be done.
When I think about regulations, I like to think about the potential for harms and try to understand. I try to think about the worst case scenario, and that makes me kind of a Debbie Downer. But when I'm looking at the Internet of Things, AI, prevalent facial recognition, those kind of innovations, I think the biggest thing that scares me is that you have this endlessly searchable amount of data that can be ascribed to one individual. And there's no real protections in place for anyone to access it, but also no protections in case someone accesses it illegally for, fraud reasons. So to me, that's one of the largest risks. But I'd be curious to see what you think the big risks are from technology as it stands today.
I agree with you. I think there is no protection for the individual. I think that's the single biggest risk right now. You can have, I'm an Amazon customer. I use Whole Foods. I use PillPack. I use Amazon Prime. And Amazon will soon have medical and healthcare insurance. So they basically know what my medications are, what I'm eating, and they can define what my premium should be on my medical stuff. That's too much power in data on one company, right? Like on one person in one company. That scares me. It's like cigarette companies not only own the plantations, they own the cigarettes, the brands, the ad agencies, the distribution points, and the gas stations and 7-Eleven.
And even the doctors who are telling you, yes, smoking is fine.
Exactly. It's great, right? And so you would never let that happen. And so why would we let this happen from a data standpoint? Instead of if people talk about breaking up Amazon, no. How are we mandating the use of the information that sits in their servers?
Now, I would say, though, the counter argument there is having Amazon have access to all of that information makes for a complete picture of the individual, could improve the services overall, and is ultimately more efficient, which when I think of Silicon Valley, the ode to efficiency is pretty strong.
Yeah, the ode to efficiency is very strong, and so is the ode to growing your stock all the time, right? Like, I mean, I'm sorry, but like you can't expect a company that has to grow in order to appease Wall Street to do the right thing all the time. I mean, if doing the right thing was a common behavior, we wouldn't have insurance companies acting in a shitty manner or oil companies trying to save the planet. So what I'm trying to say is like, I'm okay with all the progress, but if there were some protections on how the data is used and some mandates around like how companies can use the information and apply that information to different products, we will actually all be better off.
I agree with you. So actually, as a venture capitalist, because you are in this ecosystem pushing companies to grow, what is your role in helping companies behave in an ethical manner? And maybe how's that changed? I know you're an ethical guy, but
I mean, we definitely push for companies to do the right thing. And I think abusing consumer data or privacy is not something what we like to do, and we would not appreciate any of our companies to do that. As simple as that. That's like table stakes. Come up with the right policies on day one, not after the fact. People talk about terms of service. I said, like, no, it's not about terms of service. It's a promise. Like, you have to tell companies, have to tell their employees and their customers what they will not do with their information. That is a very important distinction I think all companies can make, small or big. I constantly talk about that with everybody, not just our investments, but everyone I meet. That's within the power of an individual person and an individual company and an individual entity, like what you would not do. It's very easy to say what we will do. No, just say I won't do this. There is no future without the technologies, right? More and more as we grow forward, we will need these technologies to augment our intelligence, help us deal with much larger inflows of data and information. But we also need to figure out how to live with it, how to feel safe within it.
I agree.
It's not an easy question to answer, but all I'm urging for is a conversation which is without outrage on both sides.
And there's plenty of room for that conversation. So I will try very hard to have that in upcoming shows. And Om, thank you so much for coming on the show this week.
Absolutely. Good to talk to you, Stacey. Thank you for having me.
That's it for this week. Thanks so much for listening. And remember, if you'd like more IoT news, sign up for my newsletter at staceyoniot.com. We'll see you next week.